My name is Matteo Lane. I'm a comedian, and I've written a cookbook called Your Pasta Sucks, a cookbook with Matteo Lane. And one interesting fact about me is that I have synesthesia. I see color with music, numbers, and letters. Like, for example, when I see letters and numbers, I like 24 the best because it's like a reddish yellow. The 70s are like a dark purple, and 80s are almost like non-existent. And the only green I see is E and anything with a 3. So like 30s, 300s, 3000s, or anything that starts with an E is green. A is yellow. Yeah.
I'm Jesse Sparks, and this is The One Recipe, a podcast that talks to chefs and great cooks about a crucial question. What is their one? That classic recipe that proves less really can be more. And if you're itching to get cooking, there will be a step-by-step video of each guest's recipe on Instagram and TikTok. This week, we're celebrating simplicity with comedian and newly minted cookbook author, Matteo Lane. You know him from his hilarious YouTube comedy specials and crowdwork TikToks, but he's got so much more up his sleeve. In his new cookbook, Your Pasta Sucks, Lane brings his signature snark to recipes that he thinks have been bastardized by TikTok hacks, but I won't spoil his punchline. Here he is. Matteo, hello. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to talk to you after binging all of your stand-up sets, your advice specials.
I'm so sorry.
Are you joking?
So, my God. Every time someone's like, oh, I love your videos, I'm like, I'm sorry. This is too much.
Oh, and by too much, you mean you give too much good advice to people who are in the wildest romantic situations, social situations.
I don't know that I would say I give good advice. I just give educational advice. I wouldn't say take my advice. I would just say I can give advice. That doesn't mean it's good or bad, but advice does happen.
Well, whether you like it or not, millions of people have fallen in love with you, your advice, and your cast of friends. You give so many great food opinions, so I'm so curious. When did you decide to start actually tackling a cookbook?
Well, when I was starting my YouTube channel, it was like in 2021, and I was like, well, I want to keep everything comedy related, so I'll put my stand-up on there. But I thought, well, I cook a lot, so I was talking to Chris Cazzo, who I do all my videos with, and I was like, Chris, maybe I'll just like cook because I can be comedy related, like I can chit chat. And the more I was cooking, the more people were making my recipes, and the more I was like, oh, I guess I cook now, which I did cook. I grew up cooking. It's not like I can make like what is it, like those Wellington roast beef. So like I just know pasta. So I'm like, we're just gonna stick to pasta. And then it was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun to just put that all in a cookbook. I was like, I'm a comedian, so can we do a book that's half funny stories and half recipes, because it's more realistic. I do 30 than it does I do like a Martha Stewart. Here's 100 different versions of crostinis. And it was fun. I mean, the recipe part was like, okay, I have to learn how to measure ingredients, because I learned how to cook everything from the eye, like my mom teaching me how to cook. So the rest of it was fun. I was just writing short stories while I was on a plane every week.
Wait, so one of the things that so many people might glance over, but I have to give you trouble for, is on your cover, you say cookbook in quotes.
Yes.
But I gotta say, this is a fully fledged cookbook, because what is a recipe besides someone you trust, someone you like, teaching you how to make a dish that's always going to turn out well?
Well, because I think it's ridiculous. Like, I wanted to originally call the book I'm Not a Chef, and then in parentheses, I'm also not an author. So I'm just making fun of myself. I'm like, it's a cookbook, but I mean, cookbook in quotations also too signifies that there's stories involved. It's a comedy. I mean, the book is called Your Pasta Sucks. Because what am I going to be? 100 different pastas with Matteo Lane. Like, boring. So I thought it'd be really funny if I just kind of insult the person walking by. At least, they'll remember it.
Exactly. Hurl an insult, hurl some love, and then surprise them with the really funny, really heartwarming stories.
What's so funny? When I was writing the book, I was touring, I was prepping for a special, I'm filming my YouTube channel, like I'm doing all this stuff. So in your head, you're just thinking of stories. But then once it all came together and they actually sent me the book, then I did start getting emotional, because I was like, you know what? I bet you my great-grandmother, my bisnonna, I bet you she never thought in a million years a recipe she wrote down on a card from mom in the kitchen, how to make brajole, would be published. So small stuff like that, like it all just kind of goes back to like my family and my grandma, my aunts, my mom, my sister, people like that.
So while we're on the topic, I just got to know, Is your one recipe something that is inspired by your family? Like, what is your one recipe?
No, actually, my one recipe is carbonara.
Okay, so we're going way back to like a classic pasta carbonara.
Sure. So carbonara is a Roman dish. My family is Napolitano and Sicilian, so that just was not in our existence of like things you make, you know. So it just wasn't in my vision. The first time I went to Italy, I was 15, but that was always in Sicily because that's where my family and my friends are.
Mhm.
So I was in Sicily for 5 years every summer until I finally went to Rome, and it was such a culture shock. Like the language was different, the people were different, the food was different, and I got carbonara and it blew my mind. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this is so good. So I eventually learned how to make carbonara. First, I learned from these three guys on this Instagram page called Carbo Gang, and they're these three Italians who live in their nonna's old house, and they're like 21, but they have this whole business of making carbonara. So when I was in Milan, I messaged them. I was like, where do I go get good carbonara? And they said, come to our house. So I went there and they showed me how to make it. And since then, I've learned how to make carbonara from what they call Il Re di Carbonara from Rome, which is the king of carbonara. His name is Luciano, and he has a restaurant in Campo di Fiori in Rome. And he brought me to his kitchen in his restaurant and showed me how he made his carbonara. So I've been working on that dish more than anything because I never learned how to make it when I was younger. It's my favorite meal.
And I bet now that you have been surrounded by all of these like Nonna and Bisnonna approved recipes and
Look at
like,
you remembering Bisnonna, great grandmother in Italian. She better work.
a podcast host that actually listens sometimes.
Rare.
Chaotic. Rare. But seriously, now that you've been surrounded by all of these Nonnas and their recipes and their legacies, I bet you just love going onto like TikTok and seeing like a bunch of Americans pouring a whole gallon of milk into all of the carbonara.
Well, my algorithm now has moved into, I don't know how this happened. And I'm sure the pasta's good, but Americans have an obsession with adding cream to everything, which actually can dilute the flavor. One of the trending recipes I always saw was like onion, garlic, olive oil, tomato paste, heavy whipping cream, mozzarella, and like a fun fusilli, which I'm sure it's fine. But I'm not one of those Italians where like everything has to be done the right way. But, you know, that's why I love someone like QCP or the Pasta Queen, because they're actually showing not just Americans, but the world, like, hey, if you're interested in making pasta in the way in which it was supposed to be made, you should make it this way. I understand that getting the ingredients could be kind of a bitch, but if you can get them, it's really worth it. I promise you, if anyone's mastered flavor, it's the Italians.
Because it all goes back to this reminder that like it's okay to make a different type of recipe. It's just not this thing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But there's also this love for just saying, hey, go out, get the ingredients. Yes, it may be at a different store than you normally go to, but at the end of the day, you're just going to love the result that much more.
I think of it like Picasso, right? Before you can change the form, you have to understand it. So he, for years, was a real art student. He has blue period, his rose period, and he was doing, you know, realistic paintings. And then he moved away. But because he understood form, he understood color theory, he understood what the true foundation of the fine arts was. Then he was able to twist it and change it and move it into cubism and all those other things that he did. So I think it's sort of the same way. It's like once you understand the foundation of something, then you can start playing on it.
So let's get back to the basics. Walk us through the recipe.
So the basics of carbonara, and there's like an argument on how this dish even got created because a lot of people think it's from World War II and there's a bunch of GIs in Italy and there was bacon and eggs and the Italians didn't know what to do with it because their breakfast is usually like a croissant or something sweet and just an espresso, that they created this dish. There's other, you know, people think maybe it came from like the coal miners and that's where the pepper came from. Either way, the traditional recipe in Italy of carbonara, in Rome specifically, is guanciale. You don't want to use pancetta. You don't want to use bacon. Those are curated from different parts of the pig. So you want to go for the jowl, the guanciale, because it has a lot of fat and it has a very, very different flavor, which is the base of the carbonara flavor. You want to use pecorino romano. You don't want to use Parmesan cheese. The real cheese should be Pecorino Romano from Italy. And then you want pepper, egg yolk. And for pasta, you really should only use spaghetti. It's a hard pasta, never fresh pasta with carbonara.
Okay.
Fresh pastas and dry pastas aren't, neither one is better. It's just used for different sauces and different recipes. So you want to use either spaghetti or like mezze rigatoni or acceptable bucatini. And those are your options for your pasta to make carbonara.
Hell yeah. So what is like your actual favorite pasta shape while we're here?
Spaghetti.
Oh, no hesitation.
I know that sounds so like hack, but no, spaghetti is my absolute favorite. You twist it, it's great. I love it. You know, so I prefer spaghetti. I've always preferred spaghetti. Spaghetti is my favorite pasta.
we're just over here with our glasses of wine, twirling our mustaches. Only Matteo has one. I'm just doing imaginary one. It's okay. So
Yeah, I'm like a Disney villain, just sort of like, "Nyeh."
are you the villain or are you the hero that's underappreciated?
Obviously the villain. Let's be honest. The villains are always the best. They're queer coded. I'm Maleficent. That's what it is. And not the Angelina Jolie version, for those wondering.
Okay, I could talk to you about this for 45 minutes, but I
Yes, I'm sorry. The recipe. So we're gonna start with our guanciale, and you cut it into pretty thick bacon strips, and then I like thin, tiny little rectangles of guanciale. Some people do big cubes. I just prefer them to be really crispy. So I would put them on a pan, and you cook it very, very low heat. No oil, no butter. It has so much fat in it that you don't have to put any kind of oil or base onto it because it will be cooking in its own fat. And so when I finish cooking the guanciale, it really starts to crisp up. You want it a little chewy in the middle and pretty crispy on the outside. On the side, I would have a cookie tray or like a baking sheet with some paper towel. Take it and put it on the tray and keep it to the side. We have our water boiling. Now, you don't want to use too much water because you want to use some of that starch from the pasta water. You're going to bring it back into the sauce, right? So our guanciale is to the side. You're going to save that oil. Now we're going to start the base for our carbonara, which per person I use 2 egg yolk. Okay, so let's say we're eating, so we're going to use 4 egg yolks. You want to have fun, throw in 5. Some people use a full egg and then 4 egg yolks. Some people, I just do the egg yolks. That's what Luciano taught me. So we're going to do 4 egg yolks. And then we're going to take pecorino romano, really finely grated, and add it in. And you're going to mix it around. And it's going to kind of be really thick, like a yellowy, thick, almost paste, which is fine because what you're going to do next is you're going to bring in that oil from the guanciale and use that to mix around. And then when you have our pasta in, which we've salted our pasta water, not too crazy because it's a really salty dish. So you're going to salt your pasta water. Once it's released the starches and you see it kind of getting cloudy, take a ladle of that pasta water and slowly bring it into your egg pecorino mixture and mix it around till it has a really creamy consistency. And then you're going to save a little pasta water on the side just to kind of thin it out when you bring the pasta in. And then add pepper. So now we have our base, we have our guanciale, and then so you're going to take your pasta, you're going to strain it, reserving some of the pasta water, and then I bring it into a bowl and bring in my pecorino egg mix and want the hot pasta, start mixing it through. And then if it needs to be thinned out a little bit, just add a little bit of that pasta water and keep mixing. And that's your carbonara. Throw in your guanciale and you're ready to go.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we know we have to use the guanciale. What are the other things that we should avoid using or the TikTok hacks we should avoid recreating just so that we can keep this as honest as possible?
Well, no cream. You don't want to put cream in the carbonara. I know it looks creamy, but that pasta water makes it look really creamy and it doesn't dilute any of the flavor. It actually adds more flavor because it really is a key ingredient. And one thing you want to look out for, you want to make sure that you're not going to scramble your eggs. And in order to do so, I mean, some people, you can cook the carbonara on the pan when you turn the heat off. That's another way of doing it just to kind of make it simpler. But just to avoid getting any scrambled eggs, I bring it into the bowl where I've already used the pasta water in there. So that way it's kind of already cooked the eggs. So there's no chance of them to scramble. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that's brilliant.
And don't overcook your guanciale so it's so crispy it can break your tooth. And don't undercook it so it feels like too wet. Sometimes you get a carbonara and the guanciale feels wet. It has to have the right texture.
So we've talked a lot about all these people that have raised your standards for this recipe, right? For this dish. But it's easy for us as home cooks to kind of put that same pressure on ourselves to be like, okay, I'm making this recipe. I need it to be perfect. I need it to be brilliant. So do you feel like anytime people are cooking for you, they get that same level of stress or that like anxious tick?
Since I was a kid.
Really?
Once they know you're Italian, you go to your friend's house to eat, they're always like, we're so sorry you're Italian. Oh my God, we hope this is good. We're so sorry. I'm like, what is this? Like I walk in like Gordon Ramsay, ready to just scream at people and throw it out. You know what I mean?
It's like, beloved, I am 9. I don't know what's happening.
Right, exactly. But then as I got older and you eat other people's food, you're like, now I get it.
And hey, at the end of the day, that's our villain origin story.
Yeah.
So, Matteo, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I cannot wait to make this recipe and to start raising my own standards for my carbonara. Thank you so much for this. See you.
Grazie a te e arrivederci.
Matteo Lane is a stand-up comedian and the author of Your Pasta Sucks, a cookbook. Check out Matteo's recipe for carbonara on Instagram and TikTok to see step-by-step videos of today's recipe. I'm Jesse Sparks. This is APM Studios. go make some magic.